Good afternoon, everyone. This is Elizabeth George, Director of Member Engagement and Chapter Development with the American Guild of Organists. And I am so pleased to welcome you to today's training webinar for treasurers, the top 4 things that chapters must do to be financially responsible. So we've got a knowledge expert here who's going to take you through it step by step. But before I introduce him, just a couple of housekeeping notes. We will be recording this. It's being recorded and it will be uploaded probably within 24 hours onto our websites I'm going to put it under the chapter leadership toolkits in our webinars, and we'll give you directions on how to get to both with the handouts. So for those who couldn't attend, not to worry, we always record every webinar. And as well, you are muted, but we do want to hear from you. So please post your questions in the Q&A box that is located at the bottom of your screen. I'm going to be monitoring these throughout the webinar, and Jeff's going to stop on and off, but if he moves forward and I see another question has come up that I think is important that we stop and have him answer, we'll do that. So let me tell you a little bit about our presenter, Jeff Verkuilen. MBA, CPA, FAGO. He is currently serving on the Finance and Development Committee, AGO's Finance and Development Committee, and is working closely with our Counselor for Finance, John Dixon. But he served in many leadership capacities. He's been a district convener and also an education coordinator for the Southeast Wisconsin chapter. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Jeff Verkuilen.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. It's great to be here and I appreciate everyone who is attending this session. And I understand that there are a good number of people who have signed up, especially in the last several days. So welcome to everybody. Thank you, Elizabeth, again. Just a clarification for those couple people who are here, Northeastern Wisconsin chapter. Southeast will be Milwaukee.
So
they're kind of like they're like a competitor. No, it's all good. So yeah, I'm Northeastern Wisconsin chapter. I know that there's a couple of our members that are attending this, and it's good to have you all with us.
Okay, great. They'd hate it if I got the chapter wrong. They're going to yell at me.
All right. So all
right. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing the screen. Shall we do that? Okay. Here we go. All right.
There we go. And everyone, I know Elizabeth sent out handouts, and one of those is this title, that the top 4 things your chapters must do to be financially responsible. And this, the handouts are in much more detail than what you're going to see on the screen. The screen will just kind of guide us through and keep us together. You should also have some examples, some budget examples and some financial reporting examples. And we will refer to those as we go through this session. Okay, so we're actually going to start off by talking about tax reporting requirements and what it means to be a nonprofit organization. The AGO is a nonprofit organization, and all of the chapters of the AGO are also nonprofit organizations. Because the AGO is allowed to form chapters. The AGO is a 501c3 organization, nonprofit organization, and then all of the subsidiary chapters of the AGO also fall under that same status. Okay, there are a number of benefits that arrive because of this. There's limited liability protection. That's one of the big things, and you see that on the screen right now. It's as a nonprofit corporation, anyone who is working for the chapter is going to be not held liable personally for activities that the chapter does. Okay, that's an important thing to know. So if a chapter is going to be hosting, I don't know, a recital or something like that, and someone slips and falls outside of the venue and gets hurt, the individual members of the chapter cannot be sued. Okay, and so there's a protection for all of that. Tax exempt status. The AGO is a nonprofit organization as a whole. Nonprofit organizations can fall into various categories. And I know that some of those there, religious, charitable, scientific, literary, or educational. And the AGO is primarily set up as an educational organization, and it is chartered by the State University of New York. Did I say that name right? The New York State Department of Education, also known as the University of the State of New York. Okay, that's what gives us the reason to be able to exist, and it's like an imprimatur for the AGO, and allows us to be nonprofit. Okay. Let's see. If you ever need to have some kind of evidence, like maybe perhaps for insurance purposes, you can contact the AGO headquarters, and Eric Burke at the AGO headquarters is the primary person to do this. He can provide evidence that says the AGO is a nonprofit organization and it's a corporation. So that there's various protections that are involved with all of that, and he can provide that information should any chapter need it. Just contact Eric Burke about that. Let's see. I kind of hit a little bit upon this before about the benefits of a nonprofit organization, and we talked about the limited liability protection, tax exempt status. None of the chapters, and AGO as a headquarters as well, does not pay any taxes. It can make money, okay, it can earn money, it can have a profit at the end of the year, but it is not taxable because it is a non-tax organization. And the idea is that the monies that are made by the organization, all of the chapters and the AGO as a whole, stay in the organization. Okay, it's not being sent out to shareholders, for example, or to an owner, of a business. It stays in the organization and is meant to be used for the purposes of the tax exempt organization. So that's why we have a tax exempt status. The tax exempt status is really very, very important when it comes to grant writing. Very few grants for music organizations are they're not even going to look at most any group if there's not a nonprofit status, okay, involved with this. People and organizations want to donate to nonprofit organizations, okay, that allows for tax deductimibility for an individual, which is important. It just shows up on Schedule A on Form 1040 on the tax return, should anyone itemize. That's what they get a deduction for that. Okay. I'm going on to the next page of the handout. There's a possible state sales and property tax exemptions, depending upon the state you're in. Sometimes, and Elizabeth, if you won't mind, if you go back page, yeah,
Sure.
I just referred to the handout here. Some states will also then provide some nonprofit exemption for organizations as well. Postal service discounts and that. Here's a big one. Credibility is a really big one. Okay, if an organization purports itself to be in the public interest and is doing nonprofit work, it should have a nonprofit status, and the IRS provides that nonprofit status. If it does not have that nonprofit status, the question, the purpose of the organization can be suspect. Okay, so it's really an authorization, and that the organization has established itself as a nonprofit organization and is credible in order to be able to receive money and to use money for the purposes for which it is established. Okay, I believe this will be on the next screen, Elizabeth. The relationship of AGO chapters to the national organization, we talked a little bit about this. The national organization is authorized to form individual chapters. The national organization is nonprofit. Those chapters are also nonprofit. One thing to know about, each chapter has its own EIN, the employer identification number. Sometimes it's called a TIN, tax identification number. Okay, so all of your chapters have an EIN. and AGO National has its own EIN. Okay, so even though the AGO chapters are part of the national organization for nonprofit purposes, each of them are individual organizations. All the chapters are individual organizations when it comes to taxability. Okay, and that's why it has its own EIN. Each chapter has its own EIN. Okay, and it's really an important thing when it comes to this next item, the annual tax reporting filing. There are three options, and they're listed there: the 990N, the 990EZ, and the 990. Okay, the 990N is a postcard. It comes, I should say, it's notified to the chapters or any organization that has filed in the past. They get a postcard in the mail, it's usually blue, and says you need to file a 990. Yeah, or you need to file your tax return. And the 990N is very, very simple. And it's for those organizations that normally have gross receipts of less than 50,000 a year. That would be the large number of our chapters in the AGO. Most chapters in the AGO do not receive more than $50,000 in a year. Okay, so then you can file the 990N. And the 990N is done online. You don't file it by returning the card. It doesn't work that way, but it does give instructions on how to do this. And there's certain information that you need. And I provided that in the handout on page 5 of my handout. You need that EIN, okay, the employer identification number, the tax year that you're responding for, legal name, like the Northeastern Wisconsin chapter, the American Guild of Organists, any other names that the organization may use. I don't think we would have many of those for our AGO chapters website, if there is one, and a confirmation that the gross receipts for the organization are less than $50,000. And if the chapter does happen to be terminating, to tell the IRS that it is. Okay.
Jeff, we do have a couple of questions, and we got a lot of questions.
Oh, okay. I will if I can, let's wait until I get through the tax report filing, and then we'll answer. Okay.
Okay, because they have to do with filing. Okay.
Okay. Very good. Very good. So the 990N is the easy one. I'm sorry, the easiest one. The 990EZ is the easier one. Okay, and it's a pretty simple return, and is used for those organizations that have receipts between $50,000 and $200,000 per year, assets less than $500,000. Okay, and we're talking about bank accounts and those kinds of things, investments. That's a 990EZ. Okay. Organizations larger than that, 990. Okay, so AGO National certainly files a 990 because it has receipts of more than $200,000 a year and assets of more than $500,000. Okay, tax filings annual. Okay, some of you have, in fact, most AGO chapters will have a fiscal year. The fiscal year will be, I think normally we'll see June 30th. Okay, will be the fiscal year. So as not to divide up the program year, which is like a school. Okay, they do summertime fiscals as well. Okay, and then you have 4.5 months after that, the end of the fiscal year, to do a filing. So if the tax deadline for your chapter is June 30th, you have until November 15th to file the tax return. And that means the 990N, which is most of what most people can do, go online and you can have it done in just a matter of minutes. Okay. If you don't file after 3 years, the IRS doesn't like it when you don't file, but they will kind of like turn their, they might notify you. They might send out some kind of notice saying you forgot to file your tax return. But if any of the chapters misses after 3 years, okay, 3 years, the nonprofit status is revoked. Okay, which means that the chapter can no longer receive donations that are deductible to the donor. Okay, that's really kind of a big thing. Okay, it also would make that like any kind of grant writing would probably fall by the wayside, especially for those grant writing, or I'm sorry, the granting organizations that wish to send out money. They would expect the nonprofit status. So after 3 years, you lose that. It is very, very hard to get that back. there's a lot of work, and it's almost like reapplying all over again. Lots of documents you need to send through, lots of financial information, missions, and all this kind of stuff. It's a lot of work. It takes hours and hours and hours to reinstate the tax exempt status of a chapter. I'm going to hold off on the 1099 NEC, and let's answer those questions now, Elizabeth, if I can. Then I will touch on the 1099 NEC.
Okay. The first one is IRS says we have not filed a required annual tax return. I responded over 6 months ago. No response except yesterday I got 3 notices that we have not filed. Any suggestions on how to contact the IRS?
Tax professionals have one way of contacting the IRS, and the general public has another way of contacting the IRS. I can tell you, it's not a whole lot of fun for professionals to do it, but we don't wait on the phone normally for hours and hours and hours. Okay, we just might be an hour. We kind of know how to time it out. So there'd be a consideration there to contact a tax professional to see if that person can do it. They would need power of attorney to be able to do that. Okay. The good thing here is that when contacts are made to the IRS, they do, and when they receive those contacts, they do date them and they record them. So if there's any kind of question that there's a lot of delay in response and this kind of thing, at least once they've received the document, and it certainly can be waiting for literally months. They're way behind this year. They will see, they will actually look at postmarks, of the date that was sent out. If it takes them a month to open up the letter, they will look at those kinds of things. Okay, and they will record in their system that a contact was made. There's a little bit of I guess consolation to all of that. They're just so far behind on responding back on things. They're very short-staffed. The tax laws have changed significantly in the last several years. They have changed even during tax season this year. I can go on and on and on, but that's the reason why it's getting harder and harder to get responses back from the IRS, and the responses are much delayed. Take some consolation that by no means are the person who's asking the question here the only one, but they will eventually get around to letting you know. Eventually, be patient.
Thank you. Okay, second question. How does a chapter identify its ID number? Years ago, headquarters told our chapter to use theirs, and that's what we've been doing.
I would say don't do that. I'm hoping that, I believe that headquarters does have the EIN number for each of its individual chapters. They should have that. Eric Burke, I think, would be the person that would be contacted for that. It can be difficult to find this online especially because of the sub nature of the individual chapters to the national organization. The national organization can be found very easily online. There are search engines online to say, look up the EIN for an organization. It's public information. The tax filings are public filings. Okay, anyone can look at them. There's nothing private about nonprofit organizations. So I would say the first one is, and I see that it looks like James might have, yep, there he goes. James said, contact Eric. So there we go. And that is where I would start as well. I think I would start with contacting Eric Burke at National Headquarters. He should have a list of all of them. But I would say I would very much caution, do not use the National Headquarters EIN, especially for filing tax return. That would mess up the tax return for the national organization. The IRS would say, why are we getting 2 tax returns for the same EIN? And it will accept the first one and reject the second one.
Thank you. I think we've answered everything.
Good. I'm going to go on then to the 1099 NEC. And I'm just going to preface this that for whoever is looking at the document, that I've got a few typos in here, and I'm just amazed that I missed it, and I apologize for that. The 1099 NEC is non-employee compensation. It replaced the 1099 MISC, or miscellaneous form, for tax year 2020. This last tax year was the first year that it was used, the NEC. And basically, if a person received the 1099 miscellaneous form for miscellaneous labor, usually box 4 on the old form, that now is on 1099 NEC. I truly do not understand why the IRS created a new form. They needed more work to do. I don't know. The old form worked fine, in my opinion. So consider this, that an organization, and think about yourself as being a chapter, which makes payments to an entity, which would be a contractor, okay, which is not a corporation, okay, and that's key, okay, and it provides a service and not materials. So they're actually doing a service for the chapter, and then is paid more than $600 during the course of the year. That contractor should be receiving a 1099 NEC form from the chapter at the end of the year, and that contractor, the obligation here is that contractor should be including that information as far as that contractor's tax return, and that's income to the contractor. By sending the contractor that form, there's also another copy that goes off to the IRS, and the IRS is notified that the chapter, in this case, contracted for someone to do services for it, paid more than $600 over the year, and that person should be looking the IRS is going to look for that information beyond that person's tax return. And yes, they watch for this. If the tax return doesn't record enough income, they will say, but we got all these 1099s over here, and you don't have enough income reported. They add them up. They add up. Your tax returns need to be at least as much as the 1099 NECs and the miscellaneous. Okay. This comes up when we talk about like workshop presenters, recitalists. I mean, I don't know of a single recitalist who is a corporation. Okay, I mean, they could self-incorporate, but almost for sure they're not. Okay, and so they're providing a service to the chapter. They're not providing materials. They're not making goods. They're not making widgets or whatever. They're actually providing service, and therefore they should be paid. They should be receiving a 1099 NEC form. Chapters may opt to do it for less than $600, but it's required for $600 or more during the course of the year. I think very few chapters do this. Okay. The IRS is watching it closer. It certainly is much more in the for-profit sector than in the nonprofit sector. But as we're talking about chapters paying contractors, then you're going there. You're crossing from the nonprofit sector into the for-profit sector, because those contractors are for-profit individuals. So there we go.
A couple of questions. I don't want to stop you, but they do relate. Yep. One, in conjunction with 1099s, any advice regarding filing Form 1096?
The 1096 needs to be, it's like a cover sheet, okay, to the 1099. So by filing the 1099, you must file a 1096. And the 1096 is going to say how many 1099s are you filing, and you add them up. Okay, so you might have several forms, and the total is $3,000. The 1096 will say three or four forms. You'll just note that, for a total of $3,000, and it just goes off to the IRS. The 1096 does not identify the individuals. Okay, the contractors. It's a sum of all the contractors. Okay, so it's basically a cover sheet for whatever is being reported underneath that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I think a lot of this, there were a lot of similar questions. So
one thing I'm surprised if this one doesn't come up, I'm just going to catch it. And Elizabeth and I were speaking about this a little bit earlier, and I did not put this on the handout, so I apologize for that. How do you get the information to be able to put it onto the 1099 NEC? You give the contractor a W-9 form. Okay, if you've been an employee and you started a new job, you got a W-9 form, and you needed to provide to the employer your name, your address, and your social security number. Okay, so this is what you do. This is you give the contractor, it could be a recitalist, it could be a workshop presenter. You say, we are going to pay you X number of dollars, but you must fill out this form. You do it up front. You don't try and do it at the end of the year and try and catch up afterwards. Yes, some people will do that. You're kind of at the mercy of those contractors to actually give you the information. Okay, and especially for the higher level, the 1090, I'm sorry, the 990 EZ and the 990 forms, the larger tax returns, the organization needs to attest that it in fact filed 1099 forms if they were required. Okay, so it's kind of a big deal. You want to do this right, and you want to be thinking about it. Okay, any individual getting paid more than $600 during the course of the year, and this is actually calendar year, not fiscal year. Okay, it's calendar year, and that goes, and then that information goes out.
Okay, I know we need to move forward, but I just have one more question that might be pertinent. What about recitalists contracted through agents? Does the chapter need to file the 1099 NEC? Yes.
I'll be looking to see who the payment is made to. If the payment is made to the agent will either provide the information, and instead of being the recitalist name on the 1099 NEC, it'll be the agent would be on that form. The agent might be incorporated, and then the agent would provide some kind of information that says, I am incorporated, I'm not required to do this, and you are not required to give me a 1099. Okay, and the chapter, should wish to push on this issue, can request a verification of that corporate status.
Thank you.
Sure. I think we're going to go on to the next topic. Okay, budgeting, the purpose and need for an annual budget. Okay, what is the purpose of a budget? And I have a whole list of here, but that's provided in the handout. But what it really does, it's a planning tool. Okay, you want to do certain things as a chapter over the course of the budget year. The budget is an annual thing, and you need to make sure that you have the resources to be able to do it. Okay, you don't want to just go spend money that you may or may not have. You need to understand, how much money you're going to be bringing in, how much expenses are involved with running the chapter and doing the programs that you wish it to run. And in the end, you'll either have a profit or a deficit. Okay, and budgets can certainly be deficit budgets. That's a possibility, but you have to do that consciously. You don't want to be planning. You can't have constant deficits, right? You're going to be running out of money eventually. But the budget is a planning tool, and it allows the chapter to manage its resources and its finances. Okay, and I go through all sorts of reasons there, but they all basically say that same thing. It's a planning tool. Okay, and it's a critical planning tool. Okay, how do you start a budget? And in some ways, this presentation could be reversed a little bit, because after we talk about budget, we're going to be talking about financial reports. Sometimes the financial reports, in fact, generally, the financial reports can be used as the starting point for the future year budget. So then you understand what money came into the chapter in the past year, where the expenses went, and then use that as the starting point for next year's budget. Okay, and that's the easier way of budgeting. Zero-based budgeting would be different. So we're going to create everything all from scratch, and that takes a lot more time. It's more project-oriented. But last year's financials, great way to start. Okay. Yeah, controlling of expenditures. You just don't want, you need to understand what you've agreed to as a chapter of what we're going to be spending money on. And if you're going to be having overruns, you need to understand the overruns. You need to understand what you're going to do to address those overruns. Maybe it's another part of your program, year that you're going to reduce the expenses for, or someone's going to give some extra money as a donation to the chapter or something like that. It's how you budget, it's how you manage. Okay. So I have 3 budget examples. Okay. And Elizabeth, if you can pop the first one up. For anyone who knows me personally, Little Falls is a takeoff on my hometown, which is Little Chute, Wisconsin. Le Petit Chute is how the French fur traders called it way back in the day. So I just went with Little Falls. And this first one here is an alphabetical sort of revenues and expenses. Each of these, like where it says newsletter advertising, banquet fees, those are all line items. Okay, and you're budgeting by each of these line items. So what do you expect? You know, for the budget year, like in this case, for the year ended June 30th, 2021, which I recognize is coming right up now. You know, we're expecting, this chapter is expecting it's going to bring in $250 for newsletter advertising, $1,300 for banquets, from having a banquet, donations of $800 inside, $500 from outside, et cetera. So you can read it yourself. Okay, so total revenues of $6,150. Then going down here, the expenses. Okay, where's our money going to go? Advertising, bank fees, banquet expenses. So yes, there we go. Look at that banquet. The banquet brought in $1,300, but it cost $1,600. That's from a budget perspective. This chapter is expecting to lose $300 on its banquet. Okay, and consciously, it's just going to do that. But you know, where's it going to get the money from? Well, those membership dues are being spread out, you know, over the course for all those expenses. There's not an offset expense to the membership dues. It's used throughout. Okay, so in this case, this chapter is expecting to spend $4,915. And if you can just go down a little bit more, Elizabeth, we will have then a budgeted income, okay, of $1,235. Okay, it's nonprofit status, right? So this is not taxable income, but it is called income. Okay, let's see. I have to. There we go. I just had a message on my machine for something else. Very good. So this is by alphabetical sort. Okay. And I know I kind of played with it a little bit. That says newsletter advertising. That really meant advertising at the very, very top. There's different ways of making this meaningful for you. Okay. If we go on to the next example, it's exactly the same thing, except that it's in dollar value. Okay, descending dollar value. Why would we do this? It brings the important items to the top, right? So how we're going to get our revenues, membership dues is by far the biggest item, banquet fees coming in, other things. So you don't focus as much on the sales of donated print music for $50. It's not a big deal for the chapter, right? And the same thing then for the expenses. Where are you spending the money? It identifies visually what are the important items here. The banquet certainly comes right at the top. Oh yeah, this concert artist, boy, is going to spend roughly about 1/3 of our revenues for the year. Okay, you do that intentionally. You don't want that just to pop up and be surprised by that, right? This you know, we're talking about a very, very small example here, but you don't have to really get into a ton of detail on these things. You know, it's you know, a small chapter is not going to have a lot of subset of information. You know, you want to get to the level that is meaningful for the chapter leadership to be able to make managerial decisions. Okay, if we can go on to the next example. Now you see this one, and especially for those of you who are looking at your printouts, this is lengthy. And what this is projects. Okay, so it's saying that we're going to have, like maybe in this case, 5 programs or so during the course of the year. One of them is going to be a concert artist recital. Another one, we're going to do a POE. We're going to do a banquet and this kind of stuff. Okay, so those kinds of, and actually the POE is really more, I guess, for just some expenses there. But we're separating. We're separating categories of things. So like in this case, we're looking at the banquet. It's 1/3 of the way down on the printout. we're going to manage the banquet. Okay, the revenues coming in and the expenses. You can break that down here. We have like an honorarium for the guest speaker. We know how much this is going to cost. Say, oh my gosh, we're gonna. It's what it is, right? So here we go. Like in this case, we're going to expect $200 profit from the banquet. Okay, this is a project. This is a budget by project. Okay, so you're taking every activity going on in the chapter and then creating its own mini budget, basically is what it is. And then if you go down near the bottom, Elizabeth, it says other. These things don't really fall into any particular project. Okay, like bank fees, $65. You could spread it out among all the items. Okay, these are things that just don't fit anywhere. They don't fit into any particular project. Okay, but they need to be included certainly for the bottom total. Okay, this is kind of a lot of, it's more work, right, than the other one. But anyone who's like involved, like maybe with a chapter, you might have people assigned to each of these projects, and perhaps this is how your budget gets put together, right? Because each person might say, okay, this is what I'm expecting to bring in. This is how much I'm expecting to spend. Okay, put it all together. Is this going to work for our chapter? Okay. Do we have any questions about this, Elizabeth?
No, we don't.
Very good. Very good. Then we go on to the next topic, which is financial reporting. How often do we want to do financial reporting? You want to have financial reporting done at least as often as it's meaningful for management of the chapter. And what I put in here probably should be monthly or quarterly, right? A chapter leadership hopefully is meeting at least quarterly. If you only produce financial reports once a year, you really can't be responsive to it. I mean, by the time you see the report, it's too late to make any changes to expenses if you're overrunning expenses, for example, right? So by having monthly or quarterly financial statements during the course of the year allows you to be responsive to those the needs and the shifting needs and activities going on with the chapter, during the course of the year. Question as far as like what use of software and this kind of thing, and I note on here, simple financial reporting can be done either manually or with Excel. Small chapters, I've seen many chapters do this with it's handwritten, right? It can be very, very, very simple. Okay. Excel works great. It's nice to be able to total things up. The information that I provided to you in these handouts is on Excel. If you have access to larger software, okay, there's, I noted some of them here, Financial Edge and stuff like that, Intuit, QuickBooks and stuff like that. You can use some of those things, but I don't think it's really necessary. Even though these softwares are designed for for-profit organizations, you certainly can use it for a nonprofit organization. There's really no reason. But don't feel like you have to be spending a ton of money for software. For most of our chapters, the smaller chapters, you probably are not going to find that really worthwhile. Okay. But I personally like Excel. List out your expenses. You basically take the information that's like in your checkbook, and there's our expenses. You can categorize them into 5 or 10 categories and pretty much call it a day, for most people. Okay, so software designed for businesses would normally provide sufficient capabilities and resources for AGO chapters. So feel free to use for-profit sector software if you have it available. You certainly are not precluded from doing that. I have examples in here coming up. Okay, let's look at those examples. The first one. So here we go back. Little Falls chapter, income statement. The first one is going to be in alphabetical order again. Okay, now look at this. So we had our budget from the previous discussion here. There's our budget items. Actual is our financial reporting. This is where we're at as of like, I'm going to say at the end of this year, for the year ended June 30th, 2021. Newsletter advertising. We planned for $250. We received $200. We fell short. Okay, red. Okay, that's kind of a good, nice, not a nice thing to see, but it's nice to be able to see it. Okay, it's good to be able to, that it stands out, that we had a deficit here of revenue of $50. Okay, you go down to the bottom of total revenues. Yeah, we fell short $245. Okay, as a chapter here. There we go with the, and you can see expenses varying. You're almost never going to be right on budget, right? Unless if you know at the beginning of the year specifically exactly what a certain item is going to cost, there's going to be fluctuation here. Okay, and I have rounded numbers here. Your actual numbers certainly would not be rounded like this. Okay. But here we go. So banquet expenses, we expected that was going to be $1,600 of expenses. It actually wound up being $1,500. So for in this case, we have an expense reduction of $100, okay, which is a good thing, right? And at the very, very bottom, even though it's a positive number for total expenses, we overran expenses by $115. Okay, we fell short of revenues by $245. Just add them together. We fell short as a chapter. And Elizabeth, if you can just go right down a little bit. There we go. We fell short $360. Okay, per chapter. Not bad, right? Again, you don't want to be doing that all the time, but given a chapter that has roughly $6,000, you're within 5% of accuracy. From a budget perspective, that's pretty good. Okay, certainly it's just an example. That good. We'll go on to the next one. Same idea. Here we go. This is descending dollar amounts, and this is descending dollar amount by budget. Okay, in this case. So we saw that before in the previous example. Now we're putting actual numbers up to it, and they're the same kind of thing. But again, the idea here is to focus your eyes on the important items. So you're not spending a lot of time looking at the sales of donated print music and having, spending inordinate amounts of time on the smaller things, right? You want to focus on the big stuff. And like in the expense here, the concert artist recital, from the artist series, rather for artist fees, which in this case overran budget by $140. You want to know that, right? As a chapter, that's going to be important information to know. The next one, again, here we go. Budget by project, right? So much more detail. Here we go. If we can just look at this one at the top, the concert artist recital. Where's the information going to be coming from? Okay, some of the information can come from membership dues, but the total concert artist recital revenues, $2,250 was planned for. We actually received $2,050 for a deficit of $200, and then there's our various expenses. So that in this case, the total program fell short by $355. Okay, it's good to know that, right? This is information that not only is it good to be able to manage the chapter, because of how we're going to deal with that 355. This is something we're concerned about. Do we have to reduce expenses in some other area or increase revenues? Or are we just going to take that from our funds, our chapter's resources, like the bank account, right? We could certainly do that as well. But we need to do those things consciously. We don't want to be surprised in the end. Okay, PUE, banquet. So it's all these things are various projects. And then we get down to the very at the bottom, and those are the miscellaneous things right here. Let's see. Here's our sales of donated print music, $1,500, and we made $50 more than we planned for. Bank fees, we expected $65. It was $60. $5. So, by projects, and then we have these other things that don't fall into the projects in themselves specifically. One more example here. This is the balance sheet. This is the status of a chapter from a financial perspective on a certain day. Okay, and that's why it isn't for the year ended June 30th, 2021. It's as of June 30th, 2021. Okay, this is the balance for whatever assets the chapter has. In this case, there's cash in the bank, $325, some petty cash funds of $40, and a CD at the bank is sitting in there. It was invested at $10,000. Okay, the chapter might have some equipment, which in this case is valued at a net of $0 because it was depreciated. Yes, nonprofit organizations have depreciation. Okay, so if you buy assets, depreciable assets for the organization, from a book perspective, these the computer and printer are valued at $0, but we record them at cost, and then it's fully depreciated in this case. The chapter has no current liabilities. All the bills are paid at the end of the year. That's nice. And then the equity, $10,365. This is what the chapter is worth at the end of the year. Okay. That primarily is the CD at the bank. These balance sheets can become quite a bit more extensive. Like if you have more than one bank account, if you have more than one investment, but these certainly don't have to be. It's a good. You might have a balance sheet for like in our chapter, we can do a balance sheet for our education funds. Okay, it's good for us to know how much we have as chapter funds, and it's good for us to know how much we have for education funds for our education program. And you can and combined would be the total chapter, right? But we basically manage them separately. So we can have multiple balance sheets for an organization. Okay.
Jeff, we had a comment here that's interesting. It would be helpful to add a comment column and note the reason for the variances.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Very, very good. And you certainly can do that. Excellent comment about adding the comments, right? In one of my past jobs, I worked for a large corporation as an electric and gas utility, and we had to provide, these were very, very, very expensive financial statements. But yes, comments off to the right-hand side. You probably want to, depending upon if you're going to print them out, of course you're going to have, print issues, but maybe these short comments are always going to be helpful. Or just simply refer to comments at the bottom or something as you wish. Comments are very, very helpful. I would encourage that. That's good. Anything else, Elizabeth, here?
I think does print music donated to the chapter need to become an accountable asset?
I would say no. And if the chapter bought the print music, yes, because it's donated. I would look. Is it for the purpose of giving it away? Is it for the purpose of a sale to chapter members? The cash would become an asset to the chapter, but there's really no way of valuing that music until it's sold. The other way would be if someone is going to say, well, I'm going to buy, like a chapter might have its own library, for example, and I'm going to buy an edition of such and such volume of Mendelssohn or something like that, and I'm going to donate that to the chapter. Yeah, then that could become an asset. Because we're actually tracking the library as an asset. But in most cases, like if it's being donated for the purpose of selling again, I would say no. But the cash proceeds would become an asset.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so shall we go back to the presentation?
I'm just gonna, if I can here, there's a question here from Elizabeth Kimball. And do scholarships need to be reported on the 1099? Okay. Scholarships are normally not put on a 1099 because the recipient has not provided a compensated service to the chapter. That's how we would look at that. The chapter is giving a gift basically to the scholarship recipient. Gifts would not be recorded on 1099s. And by the way, the recipient of a gift never pays taxes on gifts. Okay, and that's good to know, like for yourself, all personally. If you decide you're going to give a gift, if you have $10 million in the bank, you can give anybody a gift. You have to report it to the IRS that you gave a gift, but you never have to report it that you received it. Okay, the recipient. So in this case, the recipient of a scholarship would not need to receive a 1099. Okay,
Thank you.
sure. Then I'm going to go back to the larger handout. Oversight of chapter financial processes. Okay, just some things that should be done. A chapter should do in order to be able to manage their operations better from a financial perspective. Okay, number one, the chapter should have its own bank account. Never, ever commingle funds with personal funds. Okay, you never do it. So you have a program, I don't know, and you charge $5 admission at the door. The treasurer just happens to be working at the desk as you're receiving the money coming in, and we want there's $200 of payments made. Okay, that treasurer must deposit that into the chapter's bank account. Never, ever. And not even, don't even put it into a, I can't emphasize enough, right? Don't even put it into your own bank account with the intention of writing a check to the chapter. Okay, it must go to the bank account. Okay, never commingle. A chapter may have more than one bank account if there's a managerial or regulatory purpose to do so. Our chapter has regular chapter funds, and then it has an education scholarship program. Okay, we have two bank accounts for that. Okay, it can be at the same bank, of course. But they're managed separately. They're accounted for separately. They're reconciled separately. Okay. The chapter should have its own mailbox. Well, my chapter has gone back and forth on this one, and I think there's a couple of strong reasons for doing it. Why you should have its own bank accounts. Consider that your leadership, at least in most cases, is not permanent, right? You're not there forever, but a chapter hopefully is, right? So when the leadership changes over, you don't have to be readdressing everything. You don't want a chapter's mail to be going to the dean of the chapter, for example. Okay, there's privacy issues, of course, with all of that as well. It's just so much easier. You have a transition going on for chapter leadership, but the mailbox doesn't change. People who are going to be donating to the chapter, or any kind of vendors that the chapter may have, mailings that come to the chapter, they stay consistent from year to year to year because people have recorded that PO box number. Okay, so it's a really good idea. Plus, here we go, an image of professional integrity. I would much rather see a chapter saying, we're at PO Box 1015, Green Bay, Wisconsin, as opposed to my personal address, which doesn't look very much like a nonprofit organization address, right? You have professional integrity by having a separate address for the organization. Strongly encourage a separate mailbox. Okay, a duly elected treasurer. As with other chapter leadership, the treasurer is an elected position. I suspect that some of you kind of got appointed to your roles. You might have been the only one that ran for election, those kinds of things. But it is a duly elected position. Okay, the chapter should have its option to not vote someone in, right? Okay, if the person doesn't have financial integrity in the view of the mind of the chapter, it's an elected position. It's not an appointed position. Okay, and helps ensure the integrity and the installation of leadership. Yes, it's all about integrity. I want to make sure that that it just looks good. Okay, and that the operations are as good as possible, in the eyes of the public and in the eyes of the organization itself. Okay, in the interest of independence and integrity, the treasurer should not be an appointed position. Okay, you really don't want to do that. I recognize some smaller chapters will appoint their treasurers. You have limited numbers of people who are willing to do it. You may have a combination treasurer, secretary, treasurer role. That's okay, I guess. But ideally, it's elected. Okay, it's not. It should not be an appointed position. Who appoints, right? In this case, the dean should not be appointing the treasurer. That'd be a little little shady, actually. It would just not appear right. It looks like there could be collusion. I might be talking about weird situations here, but and I'm not saying that anybody of us in our chapters have nefarious plans or experiences. But in my office here, just even a couple of years ago, we came across the situation of a town board that the treasurer, who was appointed and loved by everybody, died, and the books were all messed up. And we found out that the treasurer took $25,000. Nobody could believe it. It was just this is a major thing, and yeah, we hear about these places, the secretaries at churches and small churches that they have a gambling addiction, right? It can happen. Okay, so just we want to make sure we avoid these things, and which goes along with the next thing: reviewing the work of the treasurer. An individual or a chapter audit committee, depending on the size of your chapter, I suppose, with reasonable independence and reasonably little personal connection to the treasurer, should review the work of the treasurer and make recommendations for improvements to financial processes. This should be done annually. Okay, and at a minimum, this goes on to the next page. The review should include a verification of the chapter's bank account to the financial records of the chapter. So here we are. We're producing financial reports, that are being reviewed by the chapter leadership, perhaps by the whole chapter. Okay, which is perfectly fine. And now we can match that up with the information that's in the bank account. Okay, and by statements that are issued by the bank. Okay, they tie together. Nice, right? So we want to see. If we start separating those kinds of things, that if we have a treasurer who's starting to take money from a chapter, then you're gonna find that doesn't match the bank statements, right? Who's gonna know this if you don't audit it? Okay, the treasurer can make up financial information on statements. Okay, at a minimum, you need to have someone review, okay, and just say, yeah, are we doing this right? Okay, David Nichols. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed the comment, but we'll come back to David. Okay, replacing treasurer's term limits. Okay, to help ensure financial integrity and independence, the individual serving as treasurer should replace on a regular basis. And in most of our positions in the AGO, we talk about 3 2-year terms, so up to 6 years. That's when people max out, and that's when they should leave their position. They need to leave their position, right? You get fresh blood in there. They review the information. Hopefully they do improvements, because people get in a ruts on how things are done. You're developing bench strength for your chapter. You're developing reviews and making sure that the information is all good. The treasurer, the previous treasurer, can come back, right? And they certainly many times do, but give them a break. Okay, and there's healthy reasons for this break. It's not just because we don't want them to do it, or a lot of these treasurers would love to do it forever, but they should be forced to take a break every once in a while. Okay, and that should be like every 6 years. Okay, at a minimum. Okay, and what I put on here, usually for 1 term or more, it certainly would be okay to bring back a treasurer after 2 years of being away from being a treasurer. Okay. Yeah, bench strength is really important. We can get into these kinds of situations as chapters where we love working with our closest friends as leaders, and you develop this comfort level, and we know all the answers in our chapter. Should respect. It's really good to bring in fresh blood onto your boards, onto your planning groups, and that's we're talking about developing future leadership with not only for your chapter but for the AGO as a whole, and even beyond that. I mean, these people develop leadership skills that they take with them outside of the AGO. It's all good. Share the leadership experiences. It's very, very good. We did have in our chapter, as much as I would love to say that my chapter did everything great. We did have and I know my treasurer is watching this one. We did have a previous treasurer who was on for like 30 years. That was not right. In this case, she was wonderful, Her records were meticulous. They were verifiable. We were fortunate, right? But it's just not a good practice to get into. You want to make sure that you are that you have a turnover of people in order to be able to strengthen the operations as a whole. I believe that's what I have for oversight. Any questions that we have, Elizabeth? And I know that one popped up that I missed before.
I think someone wanted to, who was it, Kenna, who wanted to comment? Anything that anybody's doing really well that you want to share?
Yeah, this is the time. We would love to hear experiences, positive and I guess growth experiences that would be maybe less than totally positive, right? Anyone want to share?
Okay, let me just go to Kenna. All right, Kenna has raised her hand. Kenna, I'm gonna unmute you.
Hello, Kenna.
What is your question?
I have several things to add to this, if it's all right. One, I find in nonprofit groups where the people are not accounting savvy, that they think that income tax exempt status is the same as sales tax exempt status, either paying it or collecting it if you're selling something. And I do want to point that out to people that they are entirely two different beasts, so don't mix them up. Also, my chapter, when I became treasurer, had no idea of the state's requirements for charitable solicitation registration. And I think most states probably have that, and probably some big cities do too, where you have to register with them. Not that they pass any judgment on you, but it's a database for people who want to contribute money to a group to look up and see what you do. What do you spend your money on? Do you use fundraisers? How stable is your finances? How stable is your officer base and stuff like that? So charitable solicitation at the state level. A hint, whenever I file anything with the IRS, I always do certified with a green card return receipt. So if that person was who said earlier that she'd been trying to get he or she had been trying to get the IRS, you know, at least you'd have that that in your back pocket to say, I know I filed this and that you signed for it. About 10 years ago, the IRS revoked nonprofit status for a lot of nonprofits across the country that had not filed a tax return in 5 years. So the chapter that has been using the national tax ID number may find that they have had that revoked, period. And at least in my state, the treasurer, whether you're named or appointed or elected, is a legal fiduciary position. So just be aware, you don't just have responsibility to the board or to your members, but you also have it to the public. So those were my points.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kenna. What state are you in, Kenna?
I'm in Virginia.
Virginia, thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent points. And if I can just comment on a couple of things here. Yes, I did not cover sales tax. Most organizations will have a sales tax exemption, but it is certainly separate from the income tax exemption, right? So thank you for that. And you know, it's for at least in Wisconsin here, it's ES number, ES hyphen number, there's like 5 digits. Okay. And when you go and buy something for the chapter, you give that number to the retail clerk, and then you don't get charged sales tax, right? So
we did have a couple of questions, Jeff, from Ted Walter. Do you recommend intermittent forensic audits by outside counsel or a CPA firm?
I would recommend it if we're talking, that's a pretty big thing, right? You're going to be spending a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of effort. If there's evidence that says we think something inappropriate happened in our chapter and we need to find out what the extent of it is, then I think the answer is yes. I would not recommend it on a normal situation. You know, most of our chapters are much simpler than that. And especially if you talk about, you may have a treasurer who is licensed by the state. You know, like I'm a CPA. My credibility comes into play here. Okay, so if I was going to start falsifying books for the AGO chapter, my CPA registration can be challenged. Okay, so there's some kind of level of security with that. If you don't have that for your chapter, you might at least want to have someone come in that can look at the books, and just verify that you have a comfort level with it.
And
Does that-
actually, this is a good follow-up question because Andrew Gordon posted, whose responsibility is it to decide who audits and reviews? The treasurer, the board?
It's normally the board, okay, but not the treasurer because that's self-serving, unless certainly the treasurer could do it on considering the work of a previous treasurer, or if the current treasurer's work ethic is being called into question. If someone doesn't believe that I'm keeping accurate records, then let's have a third party look at what I'm doing. I suppose hopefully your boards are operating better than that, but I guess there's those situations can happen. You're looking to answer questions, right? And a lot of times if you bring in just some outside person who has familiarity with how to manage financials for businesses, that can be a good level to go.
I know we've run over a little bit, but this is an interesting question. My chapter has an investment account. As treasurer, I am listed as the contact. Should my personal social security account number appear with the title, address, contact, or should our EIN number appear on the investment account, title, address, contact?
The EIN number should be.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
The EIN is going to be permanent on the account.
Thank you.
Yeah. David Nichols just popped up and said in his chapter, the auditors are elected. So there is an audit committee. And I mentioned that in the notes here that a chapter certainly can do that. For my chapter, which is medium size, with like 60 members, that's probably overkill. But certainly for large chapters, that's a major function. And because you have much more extensive financials, So it's a good point. And I saw James Thomas.
Yeah. Let me see let me get to him and then James, I'll unmute you. We don't want our executive director muted. Okay, here we go. Okay, James, you are unmuted. Oh, wait a second.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now.
Yes, you are.
Hello, James.
Thank you so much. Jeff, great presentation. Elizabeth, thank you as well.
Thank you.
Very short, very, very quick comments. One, just want to reaffirm in our AGO database, we have the EINs of all chapters, and basically anybody on staff who can access the database can provide anyone with the EIN, any chapter representative with the EIN of their chapter. So that's very important. And Jeff, to reaffirm, please, chapters don't ever use the AGO's EIN. These are two very different numbers. And you wouldn't want to be representing yourself as the national headquarters any more than we would want to represent ourselves as your chapter. So it's a very different thing. Number two, in terms of the auto revoked list, that is to say chapters that have been auto revoked by the IRS for failure to file an IRS form, Eric Burke can access those, and he sees those lists and works with those regularly, so he can access it for you or help you access it. To Kenna's point, if you had been using the AGO's EIN number, we're fine. We're not auto revoked, but that would mean you haven't been filing under your own EIN, and hence you might be auto revoked and not realize it. Third point, although it's exceedingly rare, chapter treasurers from time to time have absconded with treasuries, chapter funds. It's rare and infrequent, but sadly it does happen. So all of those points that Jeff made as to why you should have an elected treasurer, and there should be turnover, and there should be an audit. Those are all very valid points. It just protects everybody in the chapter from the, again, exceedingly rare instance of a chapter treasurer doing something inappropriate with the chapter's funds. Thank you.
Thank you, James.
Thank you, James.
I want to thank everybody. I mean, it is rare when we go over an hour on a webinar for people to be so interested and want to participate and comment. So Jeff, you just did a great job. You really did.
Thank
And
you.
I forgot to say, we need to congratulate him because his daughter got married over the weekend.
Yay, yeah.
So congratulations to you.
Thank you very
And
much.
I'm just going to end by saying thank you, everyone. As I said, this will recording will go probably be up on our website by about 24 hours with the handouts. We'll let you know. And I would be remiss if I didn't promote two upcoming events. On June 21st at 4 p.m., we will have a presentation of the new Oxford organ method. And last but not least, James would kill me if I didn't mention Organ Fest 2021 that takes place June 27th through July 2nd. We've got a week full of wonderful recitals and performances. And on Tuesday and Thursday, there are workshops. If you are an AGO member, I'm assuming all of you here are members, that you can sign up for. So all of this information is available on our website. So I just want to say thank you again, Jeff. This was such a wonderful, wonderfully informative webinar. And I can't imagine that this is not going to be wonderful practical information that everybody is going to be using. So
Thank you very much. Thanks for your kind words. We appreciate everyone attending this and yeah, spending the extra time and everything today. Thank you for all of the good work you're doing on behalf of your chapters. The treasurer role, some people love it and some people really feel like they got stuck with it. But I certainly wish you well through all of it. Enjoy the work. It's a wonderful service. There's a huge obligation to it. We're just all grateful for what you're doing. Thank you.
thank you. And with that, we will say good evening and good night. Everybody take care.